I went to high school in a small suburban town. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and everything that happened spread like wildfire, especially when it came to prom. There was a guy in my year, we'll call him Tyler. Not exactly a loser, but definitely someone who floated outside the social radar. Quiet, average-looking. The kind of kid who stayed in the back row during group projects and never really talked unless he had to. About 2 weeks before prom, someone leaked a rumor that Tyler was planning a proposal to one of the more popular girls in our year. Her name was Rachel. Cheerleader. Social media always on fire. Basically, someone way outside Tyler's league by high school standards. People started whispering about it in class. Apparently he was going big. Balloons, posters, even a song he wrote himself. Some kids were excited to see it, but not because they were rooting for him. They wanted to watch him crash and burn. The day he chose was a Friday lunchtime. Word had already gotten around, so half the cafeteria was on alert. Phones ready, waiting. Tyler came in holding a poster and a bouquet of flowers. His hands were visibly shaking. He walked over to Rachel's table in front of nearly the entire senior class. She laughed. Then she stood up and said something loud enough for everyone to hear. I won't repeat it word for word, but it was cruel. Not just a no. She humiliated him. She called him pathetic, mocked the flowers, and made fun of the fact that he even thought she'd say yes. Laughter exploded from the tables around them. Some people clapped. Others recorded. Tyler stood there for a moment, just frozen. Then he turned around and walked out. He left the flowers on the floor. He didn't come to school the next day, or the Monday after that. People moved on fast. Another scandal, another viral clip, another joke. Prom rolled around a week later. Everyone was too busy with dresses, limos, and group pictures to remember what had happened. That night, the event started out normal. The school gym was decked out. A DJ played the same songs we'd heard all year. And couples danced under dim lights and cheap decorations. Around 10 p.m., just as people were beginning to loosen up, the music suddenly cut off. Nobody thought much of it until the lights flickered. And then everything went dark for about 3 seconds. When the backup lights came on, they weren't bright. Just dim emergency fluorescents near the exits. The DJ tried to get the sound system working again, and people started pulling out their phones to record what they thought was a typical power fail moment. Then someone screamed. At first, it sounded like a joke, until more screams followed. Real ones. People were pushing toward the gym entrance. Some were crying. Some just stood still, staring. I walked up to the crowd, trying to see what was happening. Rachel was on the floor. Her dress was torn. Her makeup was smeared. She had blood on her arms and face. Someone wrapped her in a jacket and a few teachers were already calling 911. Nobody could get a straight answer from her. She kept saying the same thing over and over again. He was here. He was here. The security footage later confirmed it. Tyler had come in through the side entrance 10 minutes before the power cut. He was wearing a black hoodie and gloves. He didn't have a weapon, just a pocket knife. But he didn't need much. He'd waited until Rachel was alone, after she'd argued with her date, and gone off toward the bathrooms. He didn't stab her. That's what made it so disturbing. He didn't go for anything fatal. Just enough. Enough to leave a message. Cuts down her arm, across her shoulder. A bruise forming along her jaw. She kept saying he whispered something, but no one knows what it was. They found him at home later that night, sitting on the edge of his bed, completely calm. The knife was in his backpack. His phone was turned off. The video of the proposal went viral again, but this time, for a very different reason. He didn't smile. He didn't cry. He just looked numb in his mugshot. Rachel eventually recovered. She never came back to school, though. Transferred out a few weeks before graduation. Tyler was tried as an adult. But because of his age and mental health evaluation, he didn't get the max sentence. He's eligible for parole in a few years. And the rest of us? We still talk about it. Quietly, in low voices. The way someone's snapping doesn't look like it does in the movies. No music, no rage, no warning. Just a slow build-up. A quiet kid. A public joke. And a prom night no one forgot. I wasn't supposed to be at prom. I'd made up my mind weeks ago that I wouldn't go. But eventually, my friends wore me down. It was the final night of our high school lives. A last hurrah before we all scattered to different places. I didn't want to be the only one not there. Prom was held at a nearby country club. The kind of place that tried to look upscale but couldn't quite pull it off. The air smelled faintly of old carpet cleaner and stale perfume. Still, everyone looked their best. Tuxedos, flowing gowns, hair and makeup done to perfection. The music was loud, the lights dimmed, and for the first part of the evening, it all felt exactly how prom should. Then everything shifted. His name was Ethan. He had always been a loner, the quiet kid everyone made fun of. Since middle school, he had been labeled and dismissed, mocked for how he dressed, how he walked, how he stayed silent. People made a game out of humiliating him, calling him names behind his back, and sometimes even to his face. He wasn't supposed to be there either. So when he walked in alone, wearing a suit that hung off his frame like it had belonged to someone else, people took notice, and not in a kind way. First it was small, side eyes, barely suppressed laughter. Then came the pointing, the photos, the mocking whispers. Someone even tossed a crumpled napkin at him as if testing whether he'd react. He didn't. He just stood at the edge of the dance floor, still and detached, watching the others. That's when it escalated. Josh and his group, the self-appointed kings of the school, spotted him and saw an opportunity. To them, Ethan wasn't a person. He was entertainment. The kind of cruelty that passes for humor when there are no consequences. Josh, already crowned prom king, led the charge with his usual arrogance. What started as subtle jabs, accidental bumps, spilled drinks, quickly turned into something more public, more vicious. A live stream was started. Phones were pulled out. Comments poured in from people watching online, cheering the cruelty on like it was a sport. Josh pushed it further with every laugh he got. He made a show out of pretending to welcome Ethan, draping an arm around him, while the camera rolled. Ethan barely moved, flinching under the touch, still trying to disappear without leaving. And then came the final blow. A cup of punch, spiked with cheap vodka, was poured over Ethan's head, soaking his hair, his oversized jacket, everything. The crowd erupted in laughter. Ethan stood there, frozen, fists clenched, his face burning red. His eyes stayed fixed on the floor. Without saying a word, he turned and walked out. I don't fully know what pushed me to follow him. Maybe it was guilt, or the sick feeling rising in my chest. Maybe I just wanted to do something, anything, to undo what had just happened. Outside, I found him near the parking lot, his entire body trembling, his clothes soaked and clinging to him in the cold night air. He didn't see me. Or maybe he did and chose to ignore it. Then, without looking back, he headed down the road. I stayed rooted in place, watching until he vanished into the dark. That was the last time anyone saw Ethan Marsh alive. The next morning, the news spread like wildfire. Ethan hadn't returned home. His body had been discovered in a shallow creek miles from the prom venue. He had walked straight into the road. A car hit him. The police ruled it suicide. There was no note, no explanation, just silence. The school responded the way schools do. An announcement, a moment of silence, vague words about mental health and support. Online, some of the same people who had laughed at him posted condolences and pictures they'd never taken with him. Empty gestures. A performance. Josh and his friends deleted everything. The videos, the comments, the stream. They erased it all like it had never happened. But I remember the way Ethan stood there under the weight of their laughter. I remember the humiliation that soaked into him more deeply than the punch ever could. I remember how he walked away. Not like someone who had been broken, but like someone who had already disappeared a long time ago. And no one ever noticed. Until it was too late. I didn't want to go to prom. It just wasn't my thing. I wasn't popular. I didn't have a date. And I didn't see the point in pretending to enjoy something that wasn't for people like me. But after weeks of convincing, my best friend managed to talk me into it. The plan was simple. Show up, take a few pictures, dance a little, and leave. It sounded harmless enough. The venue was a hotel ballroom on the edge of town, decorated with gold balloons and cheap fairy lights. The DJ cycled through the same top 40 songs, and everyone else seemed to be having the time of their lives. I tried to blend in, even let myself enjoy the music for a while. But then I saw him. Mark. Back in middle school, he had been quiet, awkward, and mostly ignored. But high school changed everything. He got taller, more confident, and somehow ended up at the center of everything. Popular, admired, the kind of guy people voted prom king without hesitation. And he hated me. We used to be casual friends, sharing the occasional joke, helping each other with homework. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. It was like he wanted to erase the version of himself I remembered. And because I had known him before he became who he was now, I became a threat. The teasing started early. At first, it was subtle. Minor disruptions in class, whispered jabs as he passed by. Then it escalated. He found an old picture of me from middle school and spread it around, along with lies and jokes that stuck longer than they should have. By junior year, he didn't even need to do anything. Others carried it on for him. And now here he was, king of the night, soaking in the attention. There was something about the way he looked at me that felt off, like this wasn't over. About an hour in, I stepped away to use the bathroom. When I returned, everything felt different. People were staring, whispering. My friend rushed to me, urging me to check my phone. That's when I saw it. A photo of me from middle school, one I had tried to erase, had been projected on the screen behind the DJ. The braces, the terrible haircut, the outfit I thought was cool but wasn't. The kind of photo you delete and hope no one ever finds. But everyone saw it. The laughter hit like a wave, fingers pointing, eyes locked on me. I turned to see Mark with his friends, laughing. Phone in hand. I didn't think. My body moved before my brain caught up. I walked straight up to him, grabbed his drink, and threw it in his face. Silence. The crowd froze. Mark's expression darkened, soaked and fuming. For a moment, I felt like I had taken back some power. But I was wrong. I told my friend I was leaving. She offered to come with me, but I didn't want to drag her into it. She still had a chance to enjoy the night. Outside, the cool night air did nothing to calm me. I didn't want to wait for a ride. I just wanted to disappear, to walk the shame off before I reached home. That's when I heard the footsteps. Faint at first, then steady. I glanced back. Mark and his friends. They weren't calling out or laughing, just silently following. I picked up my pace. So, did they? I turned a corner. The street ahead was dark and empty. Then came the running. A hand grabbed my arm. Another shoved me forward. I barely caught myself before hitting the ground. Then came the laughter, not the kind shared between friends. This was cruel. Mark stepped forward, still soaked, his eyes sharp and angry. I knew what this was. He'd been embarrassed, and now he wanted to return the favor. His friends spread out, blocking my way. Then headlights. A car turned the corner. Its beam lit up all of us like a spotlight. Everyone froze. Mark dropped his hands into his pockets like nothing had happened. The others followed suit. I didn't hesitate. I ran into the street, waving the car down. It was a teacher. I didn't explain. I just asked for a ride home. Back at school on Monday, Mark acted like it never happened. No one said anything. There were no consequences. No apologies. And that was the part that stayed with me. Because nothing needed to be said. He got away with it. I never wanted to ask her in the first place. It wasn't just nerves. It was knowing how people like me weren't supposed to end up with girls like Claire. She wasn't just popular. She was untouchable. The kind of girl who seemed to walk through school in slow motion. Always laughing, always surrounded, always looking like she belonged in a different world. We weren't friends. Barely acquaintances. But I had watched her from a distance since sophomore year, quietly carrying a crush I never expected to act on. When prom season came around, the pressure started. Friends pushing, telling me I had nothing to lose. That rejection wasn't the end of the world. They were wrong. I spent a week planning how to ask her. Nothing dramatic, just something simple, respectful. A quick moment after school, just to try. But I was too late. I walked into the cafeteria and saw Jake Kingston on a table, holding up a massive sign with her name. The kind of gesture that gets recorded, posted, and remembered. Claire laughed, covered her mouth in that way people do when they want the whole room to keep watching. And then she nodded. The entire room clapped, cheered, like they just witnessed something out of a teen movie. I sat down, staring at my untouched lunch. My chest felt hollow, but I tried to laugh it off, told my friends it was fine, that she'd said yes to someone else, that it was over before it began. But one of them suggested something reckless. Sighed maybe she didn't really want to go with Jake, that if I asked, calmly, casually, she might change her mind. It was stupid, but I was 17, heartbroken, and still hoping for something I didn't deserve. The next day I found her alone. I asked, quietly, sincerely. She smiled, but it wasn't kindness. It was that half-smile people wear when they pity you. Like she was already moving on before I'd finished. I turned to leave, and that's when I heard it. Laughter, not just hers. Her friends, watching, whispering, smiling like it was all part of a game. The shift was fast. By the next morning, people were staring, whispering. In class behind me, someone muttered something about how I actually thought I had a chance. At lunch, my phone buzzed with a screenshot, one that made my heart drop. It showed my name. A message I never sent. A pathetic, desperate text begging Claire to go with me. Fake, but too real looking to deny. And now it was everywhere. The shame was thick, paralyzing. I tried confronting her after school. She acted clueless, brushed it off like it was nothing. Her friends smirked. One of them even laughed out loud, like I'd just given them more material to mock. That's when it clicked. This wasn't just some misunderstanding or harmless gossip. This was calculated. The messages didn't stop. My phone lit up with mockery. The school hallways echoed with it. My existence became a punchline. And then came prom. I shouldn't have gone. But I did, because I was told not to let them win. For a little while, it felt okay. I almost believed I'd made the right choice, until the DJ's projector lit up. Photos of the year scrolled past, football games, senior events, and then my face. A photo from middle school, awkward, ugly, paired with words that burned. When you really think you have a chance. Laughter exploded. I stood there, frozen, heart pounding so loud I couldn't hear the music. And somewhere in that blur of noise I saw her, Claire, watching from across the room, smirking. I don't remember leaving. 1 second I was under the lights. The next I was outside, gasping for air. Then she appeared. She stepped into the parking lot alone. For a moment she looked unsure, maybe even guilty. Said it had been a joke, that I'd overreacted, that I was the one who made it weird, that the way she said it, the dismissal, the arrogance, made something shift inside me. I didn't yell, didn't threaten, just stood there, staring, letting the weight of everything she'd done settle in the silence. She backed away. For the first time, she looked nervous. She turned and disappeared back inside, leaving me in the cold, fists clenched, fury smoldering in my chest. High school moved on. It always does. By graduation, they had new gossip, new jokes. But I didn't forget. And neither did she, because months later at a party she saw me. And she flinched. Like she remembered the look in my eyes that night. Like she finally understood. I never laid a hand on her. But I could have. And that scared her more than anything else.